Eccoci qua. Buonasera a tutti, grazie per essere venuti. È bello rivedere facce nuove e anche a vecchi amici, rincontrare vecchi amici. Siamo qui presso la demo room di Funky Junk in Milano e oggi abbiamo un workshop con Andy, che è il proprietario e nonché il progettista di Vertigo Sound. Conoscete tutti le macchine della Vertigo Sound. Il seminario sarà focalizzato sulle tecniche di mid-side, poi vedremo anche altre featuring interessanti come la compressione parallela, la compressione peak RMS, cioè dimostrerà tutte lui. Salutiamo chi ci segue online, in streaming, e ne approfitto anche per ringraziare perché verranno suonati dei brani durante questa workshop, saranno tutti dei mix non masterizzati e sono stati concessi dalla Fondazione Estro Musicale e da Pierantonio Gualtieri in arte Il Toro. A questo punto lascio la parola a Andy
Hello, hi. So
e ci vediamo dopo.
okay.
Ok?
I'm happy that you're here today, and thank you to Funky Chunk that they invited me. And first of all, I have to say this is not a mastering workshop because I'm not a mastering engineer, but I can give you some maybe technical thoughts behind it. I'm using Vertigo Sound gear because I know this very good because I have designed it. So, and basically also other manufacturers that offer similar products, it will work the same or the same basic things if you use a compressor in RMS or in peak or do parallel compression. So it's not only focused on Vertigo Sound products. That's not. It's not about selling stuff here. It's a okay. First, I want to give you a slight overview what products I have here and which products we can play around a little bit later on. I don't know if you know all the units already. The orange one, the mix satellite, is a unit that provides two inserts, and these inserts you can insert a compressor or equalizer or whatever, and you can make it work in mid-side or in stereo very easily. The first insert is more intended for, it's located here, is more intended for compressors because it has this mix knob on it. And there's also a small switch where you can bypass the parallel compression and you can really, you have a quick comparison because that's always important, I think, not doing something like I just do mid-side because I have the option to do it. You have to think about it, does it make sense with this material? Mid-side is something that can work very good if your program material really allows it. If the mix is something like a hip-hop mix, which is mixed very mono, then you have not so many possibilities to influence the track. Of course, you can make it wider, more mono, but you cannot pick maybe something out of it and process it separately. That's always something I would keep in mind with MS. General things like I will talk with about MS with the compression later on. Maybe if we step down to the blue device, to the compressor. The second insert here is meant to work for equalizers, but anyway, you can also swap it. If you use an equalizer in the first insert, you have also a parallel mix knob. So, for example, with this equalizer, you could do things like you only have 1 dB steps in the rotary switch, and you want to have half a dB. Then you can also use the mix knob to get in between steps. Or you do just a really hard setting on the EQ, and you just blend it in somehow. I think there's also, I forgot the name, an equalizer on the market which works like this, which always has some kind of fixed filter, and you just blend it with the original signal. So the clariphonic, yes, that's right. So that's something you can do with any dry wet control. But here it's very handy, and you can jump around between stereo or mid-side, and if you don't like mid-side, you can step back, and it's not something you have to patch or create, or it's made for fast working. Then the next two steps, which is maybe this is the most unique feature in this box, are the distortion circuits. The first one is creating, let's say, even harmonics, and the second one odd harmonics. In fact, it's not really purely even or odd harmonics, because I tried this while the development of the unit, and it sounds very unnatural. If you have pure even harmonics, that's something you don't find in the normal world. So what it is right now is that the first stage is pronouncing the even harmonics, and the second one is pronouncing the odd harmonics. But there's still a little bit of the other harmonics still there, because then otherwise pure even harmonics would sound like your fingers on glass or something, like not very musical. The distortion circuits, you can select a lot of things. Both of them work the same. The layout of the knobs is the same, like you can see. Red is always active. This one says stereo distortion, side, mid. Here you have a gain. You can also say, I only want the low end run into the circuit. Then you have a mix knob where you can blend it with the original signal, and you have an output filter. An output filter is very important for any distortion device, because at some point you don't want the higher distortion products that get some kind of sizzly and harsh, so you can filter them out. Okay, so, and this one is the last knob here, the unknown knob, is soft and hard. With soft, the distortion is coming in slowly, and with hard, at a certain point really quickly. Soft can be good if the material has a lot of dynamic, but can be, for a mastering application, it can sound a little bit muddy. It's the same like the difference between a Vertigo compressor or a limiter, you know. In fact, you can imagine this circuit is like a multi-band compressor, because of course distortion always creates limiting too, especially the odd harmonics. It's like a clipping, and then of course the distortion is created. So it's like a multi-band compressor where you can say, I only want to distort the higher mids and put it in with a new level into my mix. And the level, of course, is working like an equalizer. But it's an equalizer that is limited and creates distortion. You always have to add level, because if you only would add distortion, you would not recognize it. You would need such a high level of distortion that it comes out of the mix. You have to help the distortion with a little bit of gain. Okay? So I would go for an example. Diego has prepared the sound examples for me. So I just had a quick look at the beginning. So these are not specific sound samples I always use. They're completely new for me. And I was just thinking about what can we do with it? And I just messed around for some minutes before. So we start with an MS thing on a symphony style kind of music, and I will try to change the character of the violins of the orchestra. So what I do there is I try to push the lower mids to give the cellos more body and the whole orchestra to make it, to thicken it up. And I will play it, I will solo the S band, and then you maybe recognize very fastly what's happening. I solo the S. Okay, now I go to the low mids. Waiting for the violins more.
Not to fade in the rain. I have thrown a spark in the dark.
Without.
But the power over distant stars.
With.
Wish we were lost and addicted to his misleading shape. His misleading close the vessel over
So, of course, I was a little bit, was overdoing it. So, but I just wanted to show how you can change the character with distortion. So it's, the thing is that it's mostly interesting if you just distort a certain band and not the whole thing. That's normally working not too good. Maybe it works with transformer distortion, but this transformers or tape saturation, there it works kind of good because it's really a really dynamic distortion which changes in level and frequency wise. We do another example where we do the same with the low end of the mix, and then we add something like odd harmonics on the high frequencies. So a completely different setting. I just prepare it so we don't have to. Okay, mid, and this one to side. And we need the number 4. Oh, yeah. Up. This is the 4. This was the 5. The 5. Ah, yeah. So let's just. I just do a quick demonstration. Then we can also, maybe you have some question and we can talk about it. What's happening here, or what's not so useful, or what do you think about it? So, yeah, so what I did is even harmonics only on the low end, quite distorted, and I filtered away the higher distortion products. And it was only running on the M mid signal and only the low frequencies. And with the odd harmonics, I did something like only the high frequencies over 10 kilo run into the circuit, and no filtering at all, because I want that shine that comes up to 20K maybe, or of course this was also quite brutal, but it's just to show what you can do. While mastering, you would do much less and maybe use the mix knob a little bit more and blend it in. Also, if I would say about the jellies before, maybe I would prefer to use it in the mix. I have not the vocals running into the distortion or the piano, just all the strings. And then, of course, you have more control. But you also have this if you do stem mastering, of course. We work here with stereo tracks right now, because it's just, it would take too long, because then we would need another operator, and we would do mixing here and mastering at the same time, and explanations. That would be a little bit too much. That's why, but I hope you can imagine if you have a stem mastering and you have all the strings isolated, you can the strings sound very thin, and you really can make them sound bigger, because of course the even harmonics they related to the original musical aspects, and they are fattening all the things up. So this also works maybe like I really like it if you have a sampled Rhodes piano, which doesn't sound real at some point. It sounds like a sample, and it's a kind of boring. Then you can also say something like, I put both on stereo and I create my own style of distortion, how I like it. Maybe something like more like even harmonics, and if the keyboard player plays it loud, maybe a little bit of tiny clipping, and then you can create, you can simulate an amp, a speaker, things like that. That's basically what I can tell about the VSM2, about the mix satellite. You have a lot of options here, and you have inserts, and you can do parallel compression or this parallel EQing. In my opinion, please see, and I think it's important with all the plugins the people nowadays have and all these options, that this is not a tool where you engage all stages at one time. It's like a toolbox, and you grab the right tool for the problem you have or what you want to achieve. So, and it's I wouldn't start with mid-side processing generally, because it takes more time. It depends on the mix if it works or not. And if you overdo it, your mix won't be that compact anymore. It's like what nowadays, like the buzzword glue. This compressor adds glue or something, or if you fiddle around too much or generally with mid-side, you can run into the wrong direction, but it can be a real good problem solver if you don't have stems, if the mix is too wide, if you have a problem only in the midsection, if you need some, let's say you want the complete mix is missing top end, and at the same time the vocals are much too sharp. Then you can add the top end only on the side and stuff like this. So and of course if you mix up two distortion circuits, mid, stereo and side, and two different filters, you have to find a lot of decisions. You have to make decisions. What frequency do I grab? Do I grab it from the mid or from the side? And that's why I always was soloing the side or the mid and just have a look. Okay. That might work. Yeah. Any questions so far, or okay?
Is there any way in which the orange unit can be used for, because the first track we were listening to,
Yeah.
the bottom end was quite tight and controlled.
Yeah.
If I have the opposite problem, is there any way it can be useful to tie to the bottom end if I have too much, or is something I can do before going into the unit with the multi-band compressor, as I would do normally? I mean,
Of course, if you're adding even harmonics to the low end, it won't get tinier or more focused. It will get broader because you add harmonic products. That's why I was using a lot of output filtering, not to allow higher distortion products to be really excessive. If, of course, you can use a surgical equalizer before this treatment, where you even shape the low end more and then treat it like this way. The thing is, sometimes if there's not the frequency content you want in the mix, you have a problem with EQing, because you boost something which is not there. You know, maybe it's just it's something like you only have something like a too low kick drum, and maybe they filtered out the 80 to 120 hertz too much, and it's just a real big low end with a lot of air, and then you find maybe some snap at 2 kilohertz, but there's something missing. That's something you can, of course, add with the coloration device, because you add overtones, and you can refill it again. But also for me, it's for mastering. These examples were really brutal, but it's just, I want to show you how it works generally. We do not do a real improvement or mastering here. Also, I think the stuff might be anyway mastered before. So, okay. So we bypass the distortion circuits, and we go for the new VSC3 compressor. It's basically very similar to the old VSC2 compressor, but with some improvements and some extra features. And it has more time constants. It has the old VSC2 was only in peak mode. It was only working in peak. This one is switchable to RMS. RMS compressors are known like, I think any TBX compressor is a RMS compressor. And another option is the old one, the VSC2 was working in stereo sidechain mode only, or in dual, which was called mono, and now there's an extra new one, mono sidechain. I can explain later what's happening here. So I think you find a similar feature also with the API 2500. So it's not only focused on this product, but we talk later about it. Why does this make sense? Or normally I use stereo sidechain, but I really don't know when should I put it on mono sidechain. Okay. I just do a quick compression on a pop song, just something that makes sense, and then we will switch around a little bit. Yeah, I forgot, and I wanted to say something like, let's start with this first. It's like mid-side for compressors. In my opinion, it makes sense. First of all, what's the benefit to use a compressor in mid-side? Maybe you can achieve more gain reduction because you can set up the time constants with a different timing. Maybe you need a different timing for the mid because the vocals are completely different in timing to what's going on the sides. So you can achieve a higher gain reduction. Also with the makeup gains, of course, because it's working in dual mono then, you have control how narrow or wide your mix gets. The wider it gets, the more power, of course, you lose. Because you have the most power you have in mono, of course. That's why hip-hop mixes are almost mono, because then both speakers are doing exactly the same thing, and that gives you punch and power. Same for dance music. Another thing is parallel compression. That's something like you can use shorter attack times than usual and longer release times and really squash it together. So the compressor, and you can use a really high gain reduction, and then you blend in the transients slightly, and they come in out of the really compressed thing. The transients coming out again while blending in. So then you have the illusion that you still have some dynamic, and it's very squashed and limited almost, yeah? Another thing where I would use parallel compression is for example, for drums or pianos, if you want to bring up the room information. That means you can do that with the whole drum set, or only with room mics, or with the overheads only. You really squash it, and of course the room sound is coming up. And then you blend in the transients again. So you still have a snap, but you have this boxy, roomy, vintage sound. And that's also how the Motown records were made. That's why they have such an ambience and a reverb, yeah, because that brings everything up, and the reverb is always there because it's also compressed. It's not otherwise you would hear the reverb only when the music stops or something. So that's a strategy to bring reverb up to get higher gain reduction. And of course, it only makes sense to me, I don't know, with shorter attack times, because you don't want transients, because you blend the transients in later with the blending knob, and you don't want normally a very short release time. You don't have to choose the longest, but not a very short one, but because the transients and the release time, the release of the signal is also blended in with the mix knob. Any questions about that? Is this logical or yeah? Okay. So then, yeah, I just go on with theory for some minutes. Peak or RMS? I think a lot of people use compressors and they just use it in peak or RMS, or they use a RMS compressor because it works for this job, and they're not thinking about why or so. I would normally recommend especially for mix bus, I would recommend peak mode. So everything which is going over the threshold is the gain will be reduced. And the compressor doesn't care about it if it's a low bass signal with a lot of energy, or if it's just a small rim shot from the drums. So with peak, it's just important. Everything over the threshold will be attacked by the compressor. With RMS, it's something different. The RMS compressor integrates over a certain time. So a low bass tone from the bass guitar triggers the compressor more than some short percussive stuff. So with RMS, you're trying to do an average level. With peak, you can use a peak compressor as often as you want. If you use it often enough, you have no dynamic is left anymore. With RMS compressor, it's difficult because you process your music material and you do an averaging. And then you try to compress it a second time. So you do the average from the average. And it gets more ineffective and ineffective. And the compressor is doing strange thing and cannot handle the stuff anymore because it was already brought to an average level. That's why I would always use, in normal cases, I would start, not always use, I would start with peak detection. And also the peak detection gives you a good hint if there's something wrong with your mix. Something like you want to bring up some instrument and your mix bus compressor is going wild. Then you might have to compress the single track a little bit more, or maybe EQ it a little bit differently. Maybe it's too peaky or whatever. So it also is a good instrument to control if the whole mix really sits, and if do I have a proper gain reduction on the individual tracks. With RMS, this doesn't happen so much because it's not reacting on this maybe single peak so much. RMS is a choice I would use for maybe you have the problem that you have music with a high dynamic content and the compressor is not working at all. And then at a certain point, it's reacting too much. So it's something like no compression and then 4 dB compression and then again no compression. Like jazz music, stuff where you have a higher dynamic. Also maybe classical film music, stuff like this. Normally classical music is not compressed so much, but some people tend to do that also. So my first choice would then, if something like this is happening, I would go to the soft mode, this is the lowest ratio, which is it's not a soft knee, you're always inside the knee. It's like overdoing a Varimu compressor. So the higher the input level gets, the higher the ratio gets automatically. And so you don't hear the compression or the start of the compression so much. That's the problem. Mostly the compression is not the problem. It's always when it's just hitting in, and that's the start of the compression where you see it's like a oomph, or now it's compressing. That would be my first choice, and if it still doesn't work, I would switch over to RMS, because all the things are getting more subtle then. With RMS, you have to always to be careful that you don't get a new 0 dB gain reduction point. with RMS, you normally, especially on a mix, you cannot achieve a really high gain reduction because it's too slow because it's integrating over time to return to zero. We can check this later, what's possible. Because then something strange is happening. Your new point where you start the compression is at -3 dB. And you're just moving the point of the start, and that also doesn't make sense. Any question? Yeah.
The VCS3
Yeah.
right, is feed forward or feedback? Feedback type.
Yeah. If it would be the problem is that the makeup is also made by the VCA. And if I would change the level here and would feed it back, I would change the gain reduction. So I would have 2 threshold knobs. It's not possible. Because
Okay.
because with the feedback and the makeup, so the difference between an output amplifier and makeup in technical terms is, if there's something like output, it's an extra output amplifier. And with VCAs, if it's called makeup, the VCA is doing the gain reduction and the amplification.
Yes.
That's
Maybe
yeah.
I can't explain before. Feedback of 4 in the sidechain intended before, not a feedback in sound.
Yeah.
Oh.
But the sidechain is controlling the gain reduction.
Mm.
And the audio VCA gives the feedback to the sidechain.
Okay.
And then, because threshold and makeup is done by one circuit, and if I would grab it and do a feedback over the sidechain to control the audio VCA, I would create a second threshold, because the more I would crank up the makeup, the more gain reduction I would achieve. So let's maybe go for the we're already a little bit late. So stereo sidechain, mono sidechain. That's also something you find on other units. I think you also find it with API. You have a pot where you can go slowly you can blend the 2 different strategies over. You can do that, but maybe sometimes things get too complicated. So the stereo sidechain, what's happening here? You want to prevent that your stereo master, if you would work on dual, they work independently, and your stereo image would get kind of shaky or something. Sometimes mastering engineers use it to make it to widen a mix. It works with the VSC3 because it works very accurate. You don't have, they don't differ in gain reduction, whatever the pot stands, on what position the pot is, and so on. It works. But I would prefer the stereo sidechain. That means if you have on the left channel a high signal and the compressor is triggered, it also pulls the right side. And if there's a louder signal on the right side, it takes the left side with it. So they interact wherever a louder signal is. So channel A can be master over channel B, and channel B can be master over channel A. And this is quite good. So if it would be a mono sidechain like this here, set to mono, then the audio signal of both channels is mixed together to mono, and this mono signal tells the compressor or the sidechain how to do the compression. There you have some issues, of course, because the compressor will react on the mid signal, on the mono signal, much more than on the side signals. For example, you have a rock, guitar, punk band or whatever, starting with guitars only, panned to the left and right, and then after some time the whole band kicks in. So then you have no compression, because if it's mono summed, you lose a lot of stereo content. So it's, I think, minus 3 dB. So it tends to do minus 3 dB less gain reduction on a stereo signal. And then it starts to compress immediately. Another thing is with the mono sidechain, which is problematic, is the phase behavior. Everyone knows you have something like piano or cymbals, and then you have a stop and the cymbals go. And if you look at the phase meter, it's really stereo, or sometimes it goes a little bit direction out of phase. So if you use the mono sidechain function, the compressor isn't triggered from this signal because it's not there. If you have an out of phase signal, the compressor doesn't see it. And if you have something like with cymbals, which can be sometimes slightly out of phase, or a piano, if it at the end of a song, the compressor opens, and you get these problems where you can fiddle around with maybe automation or yeah. So that can be problematic. But what's good with the mono sidechain is maybe if you think about a scenario, you have a mix. That's a mastering situation. You have a mix, and the vocals, they don't really sit very well in the mix. Then you can use the mono sidechain just to squeeze them in a little bit more, to get the mix more compact. Or something is like a very broad mix, so you can get all the stuff more compact, more powerful. Or you use it while mixing for a bus, like background vocals. Normally, I would tend to. I don't want background vocals to fly around in the mix or something. They should be something like a really compressed thing that are coming in, but the lead vocals should stay at the first number somehow, you know? That's something I would use mono sidechain to. And of course, we can see that later on, if you put it from stereo to mono sidechain, the compressor is reacting more on the kick drum. Then you need more sidechain filtering, of course. Yeah. What I like about all these options is that you can really define what is affecting your compressor. Do you put it on peak or RMS? Do I use mono or stereo sidechain? Do I use the sidechain filter? And so you can really define what your compressor is really grabs. So we try to do another example with pop music, and then I just change the settings. I make just a reasonable setting, and then we put it from peak to RMS, and then maybe we change it from stereo sidechain to mono sidechain. Okay, so that was number 2.
Fuori dove vanno i miei pensieri, fuori che si perdono negli spazi immensi e veri, fuori come ieri, fuori da un passato che conserva troppi errori, fuori c'è una luna che mi assiste, alle volte ride, alle volte sembra triste, fuori non esiste. Fuori solamente in queste stupide riviste, fuori me lo immagino comunque, fuori una carezza, uno schiaffo da chiunque, fuori c'è la vita che ti aspetta prepotente, ancora prima che tu possa decidere un bel niente, fuori c'è il mare, il mare, il mare, ci fosse un modo per ricominciare, tornare a guardare i tuoi occhi immensi e sprofondare nell'innocenza del domani, con la leggerezza dei gabbiani, volare per sentirsi umani, come quando mi dici
Peak.
che mi ami, che mi ami.
I go back to peak. RMS.
Fuori come i momenti in cui ti scrivo, fuori come le parole che ti fanno sentire
Now we
vivo,
go mono
fuori
sidechain.
come il sole, come quel tramonto che dipinge un lieto fine, fuori per non essere guardato, controllato, ispezionato, dalle sbarre circondato, dal rumore di ferro e dall'odore sempre quello, fuori come la sera quando
Stereo.
arriva senza appello, fuori c'è il mare, il mare, il mare, ci fosse un modo per ricominciare, tornare ancora lì a guardare i tuoi occhi immensi e sprofondare nell'innocenza del domani, con la leggerezza dei gabbiani, volare.
So I hope I have a difficult position here because I only can listen to the left side, and I try to match the levels as good as possible. Also, the compressor does match the levels. If you switch it around, it's the same with ratio. If you turn the ratio, the gain reduction stays the same. And I also did something if you switch it to mono, but you cannot match it for all situations because I don't know how mono the mix is that comes in. So it's, but it's good if it doesn't, if the gain reduction doesn't change really much, because the better the level matching is, the better you can compare what's the better setting. Also with this comparison, the sidechain filter was engaged all the time, because it does make sense, because this kick drum was quite brutal. So of course, if I would put the sidechain filter out and would switch it to mono sidechain, then it would pump more, even more than on peak, because the mid information where the kick is gets more important for the compressor. And I always get some questions about the sidechain filter. because sometimes other companies, they have higher frequencies. And also, if you have a RMS compressor, or maybe you have a mono side chain, then you need a higher sidechain filter, because the compressor is acting more to the mid, where the kick drum and the bass normally is. So that's also something you cannot say what makes sense, or like 120 would be better. It's a 90 minus 3 dB point, the higher one. That's something, of course, if a customer is doing a lot of electronic music and wants a higher frequency to let the kick drum run through more, it's no problem to do a modification. But on the other hand, I think it's always dangerous if you work with a really high sidechain filter in the low end. You build yourself a multiband compressor without compressing the low end, because it doesn't make sense. And most of the time, you go, let's say, up to 200 or 250 or higher, then you get a tiny little bit of more gain reduction, and your mix is starting to pump on the snare. You run into the next problem. So that's my opinion. If in that case I would go for a multiband compressor instead. If you want such a high compression, then that might be the choice for you. But of course, a multiband compressor does not give you the glue. If you compress the whole mix, it always gives you. It sounds more compact, more natural. Yeah. Any questions about this stereo interacting thing, dual mono or mono sum sidechain? So I think maybe we do a real short one of this. It's just like there's nothing so much I can say about or show about it. Maybe you just have a short listen. It's a gyrator equalizer. What is a gyrator? A gyrator is an electronic network where you can replace inductors, like inductor equalizer, like a Pultec or massive passive. And what I found interesting about the design is that I can design what distortion the gyrator generates, how it sounds, and also it works very well for the low end, because if I would use an inductor for 40 hertz, it would be that big, because you need a physical size then. It would be awfully expensive. And also the inductors, they have some issues. They do ringing. They can be something like a very well radio for you, picking up everything. If you look at a guitar, you have an inductor inside, and everyone knows what they pick up. So sometimes it's not so good to have this in the studio. But what I really like is also the idea that with this EQ, it has a quite high distortion of 1% THD, but not overall, only at the frequency where you boost. So everything stays very open sounding, but the band you boost gets more upfront even, without that you need a lot of dBs or whatever. So, and this air band is also a bell. It's not a shelving. There are some other EQs out with the air band starting at 40 kilohertz. You're adding a lot of energy there. Maybe your converter sees it, but you don't hear it. You're adding 6 dB at 40 kilohertz to achieve 1 dB at 16 kilohertz. So that's why I have done this in a different way. It's a bell, and it's only going up to 20K. And we tried this with the chairs, with the last example. With the
Sorry, but that is proportional or fixed?
The gyrator is always a proportional equalizer.
No.
I like proportional equalizers because it's almost impossible to create a fully parametric equalizer with a gyrator. It's possible, but it would be the costs would explode, because you have only for 2 bandwidths to change the Q factor from narrow to broad. I would need I must double the components of the filter network. And then if you want, it's almost impossible. Everything is possible, but at some point it doesn't make sense with this idea. So I just do some EQ setting on the chair stuff, so you have an idea how it sounds. So that's nothing special to. No more special information or to explain. It's an equalizer. Let's sweep the high band. It always stays very soft and musical. .5, 5K, 10K, ATB, now ATB on air. Without. Okay, 40. this was just a demonstration how a gyrator sounds. It's similar to an inductor because technically it's almost the same, but it's a simulation. It's the perfect emulation of an inductor without any issues. That's it, and you can boost 2K, and it sounds always very musical. The phase behavior is very good. Sometimes a little bit dangerous because you tend to add too much because it still sounds okay, but that's something you have to get familiar with. Okay, so I think I come to an end and almost in time.
It's perfect. You are perfect in time. You're German, yes. That's why. But
So-
he's isn't a typical German. In fact, he drives Alfa Romeo cars and not BMW. And, no.
Never.
And he loves Italy because this is the third time you came. You ran a lot of seminar with us together. So
Yeah.
it's
So
we know each other for a very, very long time.
If I get invited again, I come.
Okay.
This is already a threat now.
No, a parte questo, è proprio un rapporto di amicizia che ci lega da anni, veramente. È stato un seminario, in Italian. I know that you can understand a little bit Italian. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to talk about you, sorry.
Se non
Very...
fossimo online partirebbero tutte le parolacce, ovviamente.
Ovviamente, se non fossimo online partirebbero un sacco di parolacce, però in questo caso siamo online, quindi dobbiamo rispettare un protocollo. Il protocollo da rispettare è stato un seminario molto tecnico, molto pieno, diciamo così, di quelle che una volta venivano definiti trucchi del mestiere, adesso si chiamano pro tips, quanto mi dicono i giovani. Quindi abbiamo rivelato un sacco di pro tips a tutti i nostri, sia a voi che ai ragazzi che ci hanno seguito in streaming online. Avete delle altre domande? Siete tutti soddisfattissimi? Allora io rinnovo l'appuntamento con i nostri workshop. Il prossimo sarà a fine marzo con ATC. Potete iscrivervi a partire da 15 giorni prima che il seminario ci sarà, quindi il seminario mi pare che è fine marzo, mi pare che sia il 27 di marzo, credo, quindi 15 giorni prima potete iniziare con le iscrizioni. Il seminario sarà tenuto da Bennilli, un altro nostro amico da lungo tempo, e ringraziamo di nuovo Andy per essere venuto dalla Germania fino qui.
Grazie. Grazie a te.
Noi abbiamo un rinfreschino. Sì, giusto per spezzare la tensione di un seminario così.